I'm Susan Mulholland, and welcome to this edition of Art Beat. Tonight, we'll be centered in Doylestown, where the architecture is delightful. First, we'll visit the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works and talk with 3 apprentice ceramicists. Henry Chapman Mercer's home, Font Hill, is a landmark in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Nearby can be seen his famous tile factory, which now operates as a living history museum. Since 1975, an apprentice program has enabled over 100 students of ceramic art to work and study at this Bucks County-owned National Historic Building. In August, 3 young women apprentices concluded their 12th day at the Tile Works by exhibiting their ceramic artwork. Leah Ritchie is a graduate of Kansas University and an MFA candidate at Indiana University, Indiana. She has also studied in Wales and has exhibited both in USA and abroad. Ruth Durando is a University of Michigan graduate and also an MFA candidate at Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan. Priscilla Hollingsworth, a Princeton University graduate, is also pursuing her MFA at Indiana University. She has taught at both Princeton and Yale and has exhibited widely. I began our interview by asking each one when they had decided they wanted to become an artist.
Art has always been important to me. There's no specific time I remember saying, oh, I'm going to be an artist, but ever since I've been really little, I've collected a lot of things, rocks and insects, and I used to make dioramas in shoeboxes, you know, cut up the Sears catalog and stick in the furniture, and then I'd make dolls and things to go inside. Just collecting things, and I think as I got older, it was important to me to create these own objects that I collected. And I was originally going to be an illustrator in college, but it was too limiting for me, and I took a ceramics course, and I've been in it ever since. So clay seems to be a good medium for what I'm doing.
I've always been sort of obsessed with animals, and I had myriads of imaginary animals that I would play with for instead of toys, but art was always a part of my life as well. I initially thought I was going to be a veterinarian because of that obsession with animals, and found that that was the wrong approach. And what really intrigued me about animals was their mystery, and art sort of helped me discover that and explore that mystery.
I can't remember when I haven't wanted to be an artist. It's just something I wanted to do from earliest childhood. Clay is a medium that I keep coming back to, a lot of media, but it seems somehow that clay has a continuing appeal.
As far as the fireplace goes, I think it's been a long haul to get to this scale in work. I've always been interested in very small, precious objects. I'm really fascinated with museums and the way things are displayed in museums and looking at objects. So a lot of my work tends to be niches and boxes, almost a reliquary-like feel, things that are being preserved and shared with other people. I've had a real recent interest in fetishes and charms. I think it's a sort of ideas that grow, and I'll see something else that feeds into that idea. And so it's been a real building, growing process. I think when I came to the Tile Works, I knew that I would be working with the different clay, with the earthenware clay here. And I thought it would be a good time to try some things that I hadn't tried before, because usually I work with porcelain. So I really let myself go as far as size, and so I planned a lot of these fireplaces. I ended up just doing one this summer, but they have the same feeling that the niches do, except I think that a fireplace is something that I would hope would go into someone's home someday, and there'd be a real focal point as people sit in front of it, the fire being a real focal point, and the firebox almost being a large niche, kind of a large scale of my smaller ideas. I think one of the biggest influences on me since I've been at the Tile Works is Mercer's home, Font Hill, And inside the saloon room, there's actually a column that has been tiled with Mercer tiles and small glassed over niches with Babylonian tablets and envelopes. And I'm just completely intrigued with that. If I could take home anything from this summer, it would be that column, but I think I've been pretty inspired by it, and it really goes along with my idea of reliquaries, the whole idea of things behind glass being preserved, and that's where the niches come from. And then the objects inside them are influenced by charms, natural objects as well, things that give me certain memories. This is sconce for Mark. It has an idea like the fireplaces, but more a personal feel. And I made it for a specific person. Again, the candle has the idea, reference to fire, like the fireplace does. Also a reference to a reliquary or something that you would meditate on, something that you might find in a chapel.
I think that the reason I decided to make these boxes was to show an animal and sort of express its mystery, its secrets, and the outside being sort of what you might see in an everyday level, and the interior being something that is hidden unless you really examine it and explore it. The process of making my boxes is a great deal like making brocade tiles and the way that Mercer actually made his inkwells. The first thing that we would do is take a slab of clay and press it into a mold which I've made. The mold originally is made from a design that I've carved out of clay and made a plaster mold of. After the clay has set up for a few minutes within the mold, it can be tapped out. And I repeat this process until I've gotten enough box, which is 4 sides and 4 for the lid also. And then I attach them by beveling each corner and scoring and slipping and putting them together. And the same is done for the lid. After that process, I put in the bottom and finish up with the tile that I'm working on. The snake box has a lot of filling in to do. I usually slip my pieces because of the red clay. I can get more depth using a white slip over the red clay body. And then they're bisqued and fired again. Today we're using electric kilns, but in the past we were using large charcoal and wood-fired kilns.
One of the main purposes of the apprenticeship here is to learn how to make tile. I'd never made tile before, but I was really fascinated, especially with Mercer's quarry tile, which is plain tile that he used on walls and floors, tile really without a design. I got very inspired by all kinds of art historical sources, and I made the mosaics based on Islamic designs. The 3 large pieces that I've made here are part of a series of work that I started doing last year. I'd never worked on the scale before, but it's been a lot of fun. I find that this scale of work allows the viewer to approach the piece as though it were a figure somehow. As a viewer, you relate to it in a different way than you would something small that's on a pedestal. Ionic Queen is made largely in response to Mercer's use of architectural elements. The piece itself is sort of like a column. The spirals at the top are what give it the part of its name, Ionic, because that's sort of like an ionic column. The decorative elements all over the piece are made from molds, using Mercer's brocade tile technique. At the bottom, you see some spiral columns. Those, for those, I got the inspiration from lots of Mercer's architectural elements that he himself was inspired by Pennsylvania Dutch 18th century cast iron stoves. I really liked the look of the spiral columns, so I made some for myself. Fruit Bath is the latest in a line of bird bath style pieces. It has a blue bowl shape on the top, and it could have, the fruit part of the name comes from the section right underneath the bowl that looks like it's got yellow seeds on it. Spiral Bud with Stand was inspired by the looking I've done at the work of Constantine Brancusi. He worked a lot with a piece on its own pedestal. He made the pedestal, and it's really hard to decide where the piece stops and the pedestal begins because they're all part of the same thing. And that's the idea I was working with in Spiral Bud with Stand. My large pieces are made in sections. I would build a piece like this only so high. It could be as short as 10 inches or as tall as 20 or so. One of my constraints is fitting the piece into the kiln. Another is lifting it in sections and glued together later. They're much easier to transport and to fire. To build a large piece, I start with an ancient hand-building method, that of coiling. Most pots in so-called primitive societies are made in this way. I roll out large coils of clay. I flatten them with the palm of my hand, and then I attach them to the piece bit by bit. I build up the walls gradually. I have to wait every so often, every 4 to 6 inches, I have to let the clay sit until it dries enough so that it's stiff enough that I can go on. The apprenticeship program at the Tile Works is offered 3 times a year. It's a 12-week session. Young artists apply from all over the country. 3 are selected on the basis of slides. They come here to learn about making tile according to Mercer's hand methods. It's a very special opportunity because not many people are making tile these days, not by hand. Not that many people in the clay world know that much about it. So it's a chance to learn things that we probably wouldn't learn anywhere else. It's also an artist residency program, and that means that we get to use our time and the materials and the space here really in any way that we see fit to further our growth as artists.
I really feel that this summer has been important to be here because I think as an artist in the 1980s especially, there's this real trend for a very slick look, high-tech, machine-made look almost. And it's been really refreshing to be in a place where you get to see sort of the whole idea of the arts and crafts movement in action. Mercer was very opposed to machine-made objects as far as ceramics goes, and it was important that his tiles have a very handmade quality to them, thus they were handmade. I think production was important to him, though he wanted to preserve that hand quality in a pre-industrial revolution. I find it, just the building itself is very fun to be in. I think my first reaction when I was here was like, God, I finally found the Keebler, the Keebler's elves tree. It's really like working in a cave sometimes. It's a real kind of cozy feeling, so you're definitely in the right atmosphere. I think the way that he's integrated his own work with tiles that he's collected from around the world with other acts has been really interesting to see. It's a very different aesthetic. One might say it's quite cluttered, but I like to look at it as a very eccentric collection of his likes and his interests throughout life. The way that he's combined his own tiles with things like the Babylonian tablets or Persian tiles is very interesting, and if you think of it without seeing it, you might say that can't work, but it really does. It's really worth seeing.
I think the greatest advantage to the apprenticeship program is simply the opportunity to live in the atmosphere that Mercer created. To be able to view daily tiles and symbols that he used and were used back then, and which we no longer have in our language today.
One of Mercer's products was the mosaic that was quite popular, and in fact the Capitol in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is completely floored in Mercer tiles, quarry tiles, and mosaics. I think there's almost 400 mosaics in the floor there. There are a couple kinds of mosaics that are made. We make a brocade tile mosaic, which is a lot like what Ruth was talking about earlier, pressing clay into a mold and then scraping out the excess and popping it out, so you really have a piece that's in relief. The mosaic that we'll show you here is a Silva Vocat, the Call of the Forest, and it's an example of originally a mosaic would be made by rolling out a slab of clay and gently tracing the design into the slab of clay. Then a small plaster wedge would be pushed into the lines, creating a recess in the slab of clay. A cast of plaster would be taken from this slab of clay, and this is what we use for our mold. When we press another slab of clay back into the plaster mold, we get those recesses again in the clay, and that shows us where to cut. So you're basically cutting apart all the pieces that belong to this mosaic. And we're really careful to cut them on the lines and bevel the edges under just a bit so we make sure that they fit back together. But we let them dry together as the design. After a day, we flip them over so that soluble salts can rise to the back instead of the front, and also it helps with warpage a bit. We don't have too much problem with warpage because the pieces are fairly small. After this mosaic has been on the rack for several days and is completely dried, we take it back into the production room and it's loaded onto kiln shelves in the kiln, and it's gone through a first firing, which is the bisque firing. After it's fired, the kiln's cooled and unloaded. We send pieces out to different parts of the tile works for different processes. Some of the pieces will be slipped and refired. Some of the pieces are smoked, which we load those into saggers that are full of sawdust and fired, so they have a smoky appearance. And then some of the pieces are glazed, dipped into a glaze and fired, so you can see a variety of effect, especially on the Silva Vocat, of different techniques. And once all the pieces are reassembled, which is sometimes kind of tricky to send pieces out in different areas and get them all back together again, we set them into 3/4 inch a bed of cement, and that needs to cure for about a month. And we do grout the tops and acid about a month later to get any residue of the cement off the tiles themselves. Well, I think there are a lot of possibilities, especially if you're flexible, and I think, at least for me, that's the key right now, is being really flexible and open to opportunities. I have one more year of graduate school, and I plan to apply for jobs teaching, and I'm also open to residencies, any sort of program like that. I've studied abroad for a year and done some traveling, and I'm really open to doing that again.
I think one of my biggest hopes is to help other people find their voices with clay, and to continue with my own work and continue exploring with that.
My goal in life is to be an artist, and I am an artist right now, but I need to get more exposure for my work. I'd also like to teach in a college or university. I'm starting graduate school, which will help me do that. But basically, the process of being an artist is just part of life. It's not something that I'm going to do differently. I'm just going to learn how to do it better.
I was quite fortunate in being able to go to the Nakashima Gala. And guess what? You get to go too. The James A. Michener Art Center opened its fall season with the exhibition entitled George Nakashima, Full Circle. Mr. and Mrs. Nakashima, his daughter Mira, and son Kevin were all on hand to celebrate the opening. Over 400 patrons, undaunted by the pouring rain, mingled with friends as they enjoyed examples from his workshop. Beautifully crafted tables, chairs, and lamps were displayed throughout the gallery. Mr. Nakashima has been a prominent figure in international wood design since 1945, shortly after settling in Bucks County. Hello and welcome to the Nakashima Gala event in Doylestown. We're here as Mr. Nakashima is signing an autograph, and we'll see if we can get him to say a few words. Mr. Nakashima, this is certainly a wonderful event for you. It's called Full Circle. What does that mean? Do they mean that you started here and so it's come back to Doylestown?
No, actually, I'm not quite sure what it means.
I bet that's what it means.
But the American Craft Museum in New York thought it up, and I thought it was a good title, so...
Well, the circle is an eternal symbol, and that's very good for you.
Yeah. And I can kind of understand it, too. In a very funny way, it is a full circle by lots of crooks and turns,
but you got
we
here.
kind of closed it.
That's right. What is this medal that you have on tonight?
Oh, it's called the Order of the Sacred Treasure, and it's given by the government and the Emperor of Japan.
Now, not everybody gets that, I'm sure.
No, actually, this is kind of a... well, there are 8 ranks from 1 to 8. And the first 2 are usually given to the Prime Minister and people like that, diplomats, and I think for a craftsman, this is about as high as you can go.
I think so. You are a national treasure in Japan and in the United States.
No, not in Japan. You have to be a Japanese citizen in Japan, and I'm an American citizen. But it's given to people who are strong on international relationships. And they figured that I had this quality, I guess, so here I am.
I think you do. So are you pleased with the turnout?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's great fun.
I'm standing here with Linda Buki, who is the director of the James Michener Art Center. Linda, this is certainly a great night for Doylestown. What are your thoughts about tonight?
Well, I think it is a great event for Doylestown. It's a great event for Bucks County and a great event for Pennsylvania. After all, George Nakashima lives here. This is his home. He's worked in Bucks County and Pennsylvania most of his professional life, and we're very, very happy to have Full Circle here because really it is a full circle for George, and it's a full circle for the James Michener Art Center because we've completed our first full year. So how wonderful that we could celebrate that with this special, special exhibition of George's work.
Well, congratulations to you, who have had a lot to do with it, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Underneath the big tents, patrons were wined and dined, while the big band sound encouraged many to dancing in the streets. I'm standing with Sandra Myers, who is cultural advisor to our governor. Sandra, what brought you all the way from Harrisburg to Doylestown, Pennsylvania tonight?
Well, I've been thinking that on the way down, and I've decided that I know why. It is because the Michener Center is the newest cultural facility in the state, the newest museum in the state, one that I love and admire and respect for its vitality and verve and for the future I know it's going to have.
What do you think of this present exhibition on George Nakashima?
Breathtaking.
It is. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, besides being the assistant treasurer of the board, I've co-chaired this event this evening, and I think it really has highlighted for the whole region of Bucks County the arts and how important it is to us. And I think the fact that we can support it and that it has been privatized has been very important to the growth of this institution. The main reason to have been involved, I believe, because everyone needs something good for the soul, and art brings that out of people. And I feel very strongly about our environment and that we surround ourselves with beautiful things.
I'm standing here with Senator Lewis, who is going to help the James Michener Arts Center through its expansion efforts. Would you tell us about this, Senator?
Well, this is such an exciting thing for Bucks. What the statement has been to the community is something that's really captured me, and so as we've turned to the state legislature for support, what we've been able to do is to develop a program that is going to generate over the next 5 years $1 million in state funds directed specifically to the expansion efforts of the Michener Center. We've seen the program and the proposals for the new building, and that's basically what we're hoping to underwrite. So I'm committed to it and I'm excited about it. This is one of the greatest things that's happened to Bucks County.
4 big white tents sheltered guests from the storm and also added a decidedly festive feeling to the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's post time. The James A. Michener Art Center would like to welcome you to this gala event. We hope that you'll have a wonderful evening and have enjoyed the exhibits. And we want to thank you all for being here and for supporting the arts.
A tasty dinner of tenderloin of beef was concluded with an individual hazelnut sponge cake for each table, which bore a perfect replica of the James Michener Arts Center. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show and that you'll visit the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works yourself, and be sure to go to the James A. Michener Arts Center. Good night.